Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of March 29th, 2015, wherein I tell you about the books that I finished in the past week. This past week I started and finished 4 books. Yay! Maybe this will actually be a short wrap-up for once. The first book that I started and finished was Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. In this particular book, Sam Vimes is chasing after a sweet-talking psychopath and ends up getting thrown back 30 years in time along with the sweet-talking psychopath during a revolutionary period in Ankh-Morpork's history, and he's basically impersonating the man who, in his timeline, very much influenced him. So he's pretending to be his own mentor in this novel, and reading this book now, it has a lot of parallels with what's going on today in US society, at least, with rioting, for example. I had a really hard time not thinking about things like Ferguson and police brutality and the militarization of the police force. This could be seen as Terry Pratchett, discussing things like militarization of the police force and torture. For example, there's a part of the Night Watch called the Unmentionables, where basically the police force rounds up people and drops them on the Unmentionables' doorstep without asking any questions. The police, the coppers in the story know that they're handing people over to be tortured and killed, but they don't talk about it, and it's something that Sam Vimes has to deal with. And it's the exact kind of thing that goes on today. I mean, there was not that long ago a story in the news about a black site for the Chicago PD, which is exactly the same kind of thing. It's a place where people go and they disappear and you can't find them. It's very interesting to read a Discworld novel as an adult. I read the majority of the major Discworld novels when I was 12, 13, and 14, and I read them for the humor. I was, for the most part, completely unaware that they were satires or parodies or anything. I just thought they were funny fantasy books. It wasn't until, fast forward like 10 years, that I realized, of course, that it's he's skewering some real things. And so reading a Discworld novel from an adult perspective, especially this particular one, was eye-opening, to say the least. I really enjoyed it. And the particular thing is that I never really enjoyed the Sam Vimes novels that much 10 years ago. They were my least favorite stories, and as an adult, I can kind of understand why, because I think that this particular character encounters some really real-world harsh problems that I, as a young child, didn't really understand or care for, and there was just subject matter that I didn't get at the time. And reading it as an adult, I kind of want to reread a lot of the Sam Vimes novels. I also want to reread Small Gods, now that everyone's been talking about it, just to see what I missed as a kid. Obviously I missed a lot. I don't remember what I rated this book. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. It was really good. It was also really funny. The next book that I finished was another Roger Zelazny novel. This is Creatures of Light and Darkness. It was published in 1969? Yes, so a year or two before he started the Amber Chronicles. And ostensibly this is a science fiction novel, but it's 1969 science fiction wrapped up in Egyptian mythology. And so today it reads, I think, a lot more like fantasy. If somebody had never told me that this was supposed to be a science fiction novel, I would never have thought it was. I would never ever have thought it was. I think that the one thing I'd like to pass along about this book is what I read on Wikipedia, which is that Zelazny wrote this as a writing exercise, that he did not actually intend to be published. It was apparently Samuel R. Delany that encouraged him to submit it for publication, and he did, and it was apparently very influential, and it reads like someone who's experimenting with language. It's not on the level of annoyance as some of the experimental language in the Amber Chronicles, in the first couple of books in the Amber Chronicles, and I don't really enjoy experimental writing that much, but it worked relatively okay. The basic story is, because I said it's supposed to be science fiction, it's supposed to be in a very futuristic world where some beings have been elevated to the level of basically gods, and that you have the gods and then you have the immortals. And there is the House of Life and the House of the Dead, and they are trying to maintain a balance across all the inhabited worlds, but they are two stations when there used to be many other stations that helped keep the equilibrium, and they're fighting each other rather than really getting along. And yeah, I don't even know how to explain the plot of this book. I keep trying and I keep sucking at this. It was okay. I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about this book. At certain points I was really enjoying it, especially when I figured out kind of what the point was, but it's nebulous in my mind. It just sort of went in and went out, and now I don't know what to say about it. The next book that I finished was an audiobook. It was The World Without Us by Alan Weisman. It is literally a book about what would happen if humanity disappeared very abruptly, like one day we're here, one day we're not, all of us are gone. How would nature reclaim the world? How quickly would it do that? And would we leave behind any lasting impression on the earth? Could nature undo what we have done to it, or is there something that we have left behind that will last for a significant period of time? It was a really interesting book. Not all of it is taken up with an explanation of how, you know, our cities would break down, for example. He does go on some digressions to talk about how we have changed the world and how nature may or may not be able to undo that, and some history lessons as well. For example, he talks about the Mayan civilization and how that disappeared. It was just really interesting. If you're interested in the impact that we have had on the earth, on how the earth could revert back to the way it used to be before we had the ability to drastically alter our environments, then I would highly recommend this book. It's not the most hard-hitting scientific book, but it is thought-provoking, and I was at times kind of depressed about what I was hearing, but also kind of excited. And there's a certain point where you're listening to all this and you almost kind of want it to happen. You almost kind of want humanity to disappear just to see, would this really happen? And I wish that there were more places in the world where we had not touched, and where we could see what the world would really be like without us. There are not that many primeval forests left. There aren't that many places that are untouched by what we've done because we have so crazily altered the world. And at the end of this book I was really sad about that, actually. There's no way that any living human being is ever going to really know, I think, what the world was like before us or what the world could be like without us. The final book that I finished this week was Luck in the Shadows by Lynn Flewelling. This is the first book in the Night Runner series, and I really enjoyed this book. It is more traditional type fantasy than I really read these days, but it was the perfect thing to read this week. I've not had a great week. I have had a pretty crappy last couple of days, and this was just fun with good characters, an interesting plot, and there are a lot more books I can read. It's so good. The basic story is that a young boy, a 16-year-old boy named Alec of Kerry, is rescued from prison by a man named Sarago, who is kind of a thief slash spy slash jack of all trades. What does it say? Oh, the back says spy, rogue, thief, and noble. I really like Sarago. I think that my friends really like Alec. I'm not sure, but I really like Sarago, and there's apparently some hint about Alec and who he is, what he can do, that they that Lynn Flewelling didn't go into in the first book, so I have already ordered books 2 and 3 and I'll be reading those very soon. It is a world where women are more involved in like the military. There's a queen, there are, you know, female commanders in the various military forces, and I really liked that. I didn't know that going in, but it's kind of egalitarian feeling, and I really enjoy that, especially because I've been so disappointed reading the Amber Chronicles here recently with, you know, practically no female characters. None of them are really well developed. And this book, while all the main characters are men, the secondary female characters were well done, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how many female characters there actually were in this book, and how good they are. They're not all villainesses, for example. My one complaint, this one thing that kept irritating me so much while I was reading this though, it is actually more of a funny thing than like a serious complaint, so don't worry, I'm not bashing the book too much, but every time somebody is ill or has a bruise or is feeling poorly, they're like, let me go get some herbs for that. I started just waiting for the word herb to show up. This is a really weird thing to latch onto while reading a book, but it just started to get funny. I would just start laughing whenever it came up. I'm pretty sure there's more to medicine than just herbs. I could be wrong, but that is everything that I read this past week. If you've read any of these books and you want to talk about them, please comment down below. And I hope you guys have a good week. Yes, I plan on having a much better week than I did this past one. Just mentally setting expectations there. And I will talk to you guys again in my next video. Bye.